Picture this, it's early January in 2025 and the basketball world is buzzing. A new name has just popped up on the list of every scout, analyst and fan that dreams of their team landing the NBA's next big superstar. It's a 16-year-old kid who's the brother of a certified NBA talent, and he's got the highlight reel that makes him look like a future superstar. Projections from major draft boards like ESPN and Bleacher Report aren't just putting him in the first round. They're throwing his name around as a lottery selection. Some even have him as a top 6 pick in the 2026 NBA draft. The name I'm talking about is, of course, Dyson Daniels, the kid that was supposed to be Australia's next big NBA prospect. Fast forward to today, just over a year later, and his name has all but disappeared from those same draft boards. The lottery hype? Well, that has straight up evaporated. Dyson Daniels didn't just slide down to the second round. He fell to the point where he didn't even sign up for selection in the draft. How does a player go from being the second coming of one of the most successful Australian NBA players of all time to a complete afterthought in a single season? To understand what went wrong, we first have to understand just how good everything seemed to be going. The story begins with the Daniels family name. In Australian basketball, that name carries some serious weight. Dash wasn't just any talented teenager. He was the younger brother of Dyson Daniels. Dyson had already created a successful path to the NBA after being drafted 8th overall in 2022. But after a trade to the Hawks, Dyson exceeded expectations, becoming a defensive force and a reliable scorer for the Atlanta Hawks. That family name that Dash holds was a story that practically wrote itself. It wasn't just hype, it was a bloodline that created high expectations. Scouts looked at Dash and saw the same potential, the same court vision, and the same fire that had already made his brother a success. At just 16 and 17 years old, during the peak of his hype, he had what scouts love to call a massive development runway. He wasn't just a good prospect, he was a long-term investment with a sky-high ceiling. The media was on the hype train as well. Headlines were already celebrating him as the top international prospect in the 2026 NBA draft class, before he had even played a single game at a professional level. The hype hit an all-time high when Dyson Daniels made a decision that seemed both bold and brilliant, when he decided to skip college and instead sign a contract with the NBL's Next Stars program to play for Melbourne United. On paper, it looked like the perfect move. The Next Stars program was a legitimate, proven pathway to the NBA. It had already launched the careers of guys like LaMelo Ball and Josh Giddey, turning them into high first-round draft picks. It offered Dash a chance to develop against grown men in a league known for its physicality and professionalism, and Melbourne United was seen as the ideal team to set him up for success. The roster was a fortress of experience, featuring NBA champion Matthew Dellavedova and NBL legend Chris Golding. The narrative was set. Dash would be mentored by an NBA champion and the best shooter in NBL history while being sharpened by elite competition, with the hope that he would come out a year later as a battle-tested NBA-ready lottery pick. The stage was set for a perfect season. Or was it? The hype from the family name is one thing, but the brutal reality of professional basketball is a whole different story. The 2025-2026 NBL season kicked off, and the story surrounding Dyson Daniels began to snap, crack, fracture, and then completely shatter. The jump from being a teenage highlight reel to a rookie on a professional basketball team full of veteran leaders was a lot for Dash to handle. The main reason for his plummeting draft stock came down to one thing: his stats. The numbers weren't just underwhelming for a lottery prospect, they were alarming. During the 2025-2026 NBL season, Dyson Daniels averaged a disappointing 4.1 points, 2.4 rebounds, and 0.9 assists per game. NBA scouts who were expecting to watch a dynamic playmaker were instead left watching a meaningless role player. He was on the floor for just an average of 14 minutes per game, while often looking hesitant to make a move, or at times just plain lost. But a number that damaged his draft stock arguably more than anything else was his free throw percentage. It sat at a catastrophic 37.9%. For a guard, a free throw percentage that low isn't just a red flag, it's a fire alarm, signaling a fundamental flaw in his shooting mechanics. Sure, there were flashes of brilliance, like a dominant 23-point outburst where he hit 4 of 5 threes, but that game was just that, a flash of brilliance in a season defined by constant inconsistency. So, was it a lack of talent or something more complicated? That perfect environment at Melbourne United turned out to be a double-edged sword. A team stacked with veterans like Matthew Dellavedova and Chris Goulding was a team that was already built to win. Both of their stars are ball-dominant guards who commanded the ball on pretty much every possession. There was very little room for a 17-year-old to learn on the job, play through his mistakes, or be a primary creator and the star of his team. He wasn't trusted to run the offense, and his role became a massive question mark. Was he a shooter, a defender, or a playmaker? He was asked to be a little bit of everything, and in the end, he became a master of nothing. The dream of learning from Dellavedova and Goulding turned into a reality of watching them from the bench. He wasn't their apprentice. He was just fighting for playing time on a team whose ambitions were much bigger than developing a potential NBA lottery pick. As the season continued, the conversation around Dyson Daniels shifted from when he would become a star to if he would even get drafted. In early 2025, he was a consistent sighting in top 10 mock drafts. By the middle of the NBL season, the downfall had begun. First, he slipped out of the lottery. Then, he tumbled past pick 20. By March of 2026, ESPN mock drafts had him barely holding on at pick 49, which was a mile away from that top 6 projection from the beginning of the year. Soon after, his name was wiped completely off the entire projected draft board. But this wasn't the NBL's fault. The Next Stars program had still worked wonders for other prospects. Players like Alex Sarr, LaMelo Ball, and Josh Giddey were all top picks in their drafts. But this is the opposite of how Dash's development was tracking. In fact, Dash was becoming a ghost. His initial hype had become a distant memory. He was no longer a prospect, he was becoming a cautionary tale. The final confirmation of his downfall came not from a scout or a journalist, but from Dyson Daniels himself. In April 2026, with the NBA draft just around the corner, news broke via a press release that Dyson Daniels was officially withdrawing his name from the 2026 NBA draft. The statement talked about focusing on development and committing to another year in the NBL, but everyone in the basketball world could read between the lines. This was him admitting that he wasn't ready. The one and done dream was officially over. This decision was a seismic event in his young career. Instead of preparing for a life as an NBA rookie, he was now facing another year as a teenager in Australia's NBL, with him trying to rebuild his value from what has pretty much become nothing, pushing his NBA dream further into an uncertain future. So what really happened? How did it all go so wrong so fast? Well, the boring thing is, there's no real answer to that question. It was a combination of overwhelming hype, the immense pressure of a family legacy, and the unforgiving nature of professional sports. He was a 16-year-old kid who was sold to the world as a finished product. The reality was that he was a raw talent with major holes in his game, especially his shaky shooting and a frame that wasn't ready for the grind of the NBL, let alone the NBA. He was put on a team that didn't allow him to run his own team or give him the game time that he needed to be able to grow. He was put on a win-now team that had very little patience for a developmental player. No matter how much hype he had, he needed minutes. He needed the ball in his hands, and he needed the freedom to fail. With Melbourne United, he got none of that. So is the story of Dyson Daniels just another cautionary tale of what too much hype can do to a player? Well, not really. It's a story about how we build up young athletes, putting unbearable expectations on their shoulders before they're even old enough to vote, only to cast them aside when they don't meet our impossible standards. He wasn't a bust. He was a 17-year-old kid who struggled. The lottery projections weren't his fault. They were the product of a system that often values potential over production and a good storyline over reality. His disappointing season wasn't necessarily a sign of failure, but maybe a necessary dose of reality. You could even argue that the decision to withdraw from the draft was actually a sign of maturity, with him admitting to the world that he needed more time. The NBA dream isn't dead for Daniels. Instead, he now faces the monumental task of rebuilding his game and his reputation. The question is no longer, is he the next big thing, but rather, can he become a draftable prospect? The journey to the NBA just got a whole lot longer and a whole lot harder for Dash. And now the real work begins for him to rebuild his reputation and his potential NBA career. But what do you think was the biggest factor in Dash's draft stock collapse? Was it the pressure, being on the wrong team, or was the hype just never justified to begin with? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoy these deep dives that go beyond the box score, make sure to like and subscribe for more breakdowns. Thanks for watching and goodbye.